Good early morning, everyone. Sunday, 2:08 a.m. on it is now the 7th of August, 2022. And just wanted to do what I hope will be a video. And I'm asking the question, and it's a question. Are mask wearers, those who wear masks, are they super spreading cross contaminators? And as I noted in the description, my degrees in virology and epidemiology or infectious disease are from Facebook. In other words, they don't exist. I do not have I do not have a background in medical science. As I've stated often enough during previous videos, I have taken some undergraduate courses in science at the university level, but I'm no expert. So I'm asking a question based on what I know. What I do know, there are some things about which I am aware and have empirical knowledge of them, such as how is a mask to be worn. I've taken training on what they typically refer to as donning and doffing procedures, how to put on, how to take off PPE, personal protective equipment, medical personal protective equipment. That is to say, the medical equipment that has to be kept sterile. And I had a conversation with a younger person who I work with within the last week. And this individual always has a mask on. I don't ever seen his face. And he touches the outside material of his mask. And then he touches other things, what I will call common surfaces. And I think this is something we all learned about in middle school, grades 7 and 8, health class, about cross-contamination. Every flu season, they would teach you in health class, the reason you wash your hands so much is because of contamination. And I've said it many times before, we touch our eyes, nose, mouth, instinctively, subconsciously, not even aware we're doing it. The eyes, the nose, the mouth happens all the time. And then we touch common surfaces. And then someone else comes and touches that same surface. Now they have the contaminant on their hands. And if they don't wash their hands before doing a subconscious, not even aware, they wipe their eyes, nose, mouth. Virology 101, as far as I know, I'll say it's a guess, but everything that's been written in the COVID era and prior to the COVID era says that eyes, nose, and mouth are the three main points of entry. And so we have still so many people wearing masks. And what is a mask? It's right over your mouth and nose if you're wearing it properly, which tons of people don't. But even if it's just below the mouth, it's damp, it's warm, and I've shared a previous article, masks not always the answer, published to CBC News. And there was an infection control epidemiologist with the University of Toronto explaining that a mask is an ideal breeding ground for pathogens, for bacteria, for germs, for viruses. And the point he made in this article was that at some point, he said the biggest danger to mask wearing is that people wear them too long. I know Harry Balash is saying I agree, but you are 2 years too late on this. I've been saying it from the start, but unfortunately what happened is that people were scared, people were terrified, and so it is said that a drowning man will even throw a drowning man an anchor and he'll grab at it. And irrespective of the fact that the likes of Anthony Fauci, Candace Teresa Tam, Ontario's former chief medical health officer, David Williams, those three individuals gave public interviews, and they were being asked by journalists, why aren't you requiring masks? Why aren't you recommending masks? At that time, they were not, and early in the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it. And they, all three of them, said variations of the same thing, that improper wearing and handling of masks could make things worse. And then they did a 180 and said, well, no, we're going to recommend that everyone wear a mask. And they suddenly forgot that little piece about proper handling and proper use. Have to wear it properly, have to handle it properly. That means it's sterile PPE. Think of a surgeon going into an OR setting and the procedure, the donning and doffing procedures that they go through. And likewise, when they're in the operating room in theater, how they operate, they don't touch anything that is not sterile. They're wearing gloved, their hands are gloved, and they only touch instruments, scalpel, retraction, suction, whatever it is. All those instruments have been sterilized. No cross-contamination. The outside of the mask, wet, warm, ideal breeding ground for all manner of pathogens, and people constantly touch the outside, constantly, pulling it down to talk to people because they can't be heard or understood properly, or because their nose itches. I've shared the experience of seeing someone pull it down to read an expiry tag on a product and then putting it back up and putting the product back on the shelf. Talk about a recipe for cross-contamination. Forget SARS-CoV-2, forget monkeypox, everything. This young lad I work with, we had a conversation. I thought it was productive. We'll see. Because I always noticed in this guy's eyes, because that's all I can really see, his face is covered from the nose down, that are you ready for monkeypox? Because we're seeing the case numbers climb. We're getting, it looks to me like we're getting, back in May, I wrote it down. I think we were 700 at the end of May. We were at like 700 and some odd cases. Cases were growing by 20, 30, 40 a day. And then as time moved on, they were growing by 100 or so per day. Now, by my reckoning, it looks like we're seeing global cases climb by 1,000 or so per day. It's looking, yesterday it was 25,000. Today I look, it's 27,000. And that's only confirmed. They're also, the number's over 30,000 if you include both confirmed and suspected cases. And I've talked about it before. Just because someone is sick doesn't mean they get tested for monkeypox. They go into the doctor, they've got swollen lymph nodes, fever, cough, headache, they've got all these symptoms. But if they're not displaying the rash, all the mainstream articles are saying that they're not tested for monkeypox. The monkeypox is only tested for once the rash has developed, and provided it's a rash consistent with monkeypox. But now there was just an article today saying that the monkeypox rash is presenting differently than it has in years past. I've also shared the fact that according to actual experts in infectious disease, that the monkeypox virus, this MPX, that it normally undergoes 1 or 2 mutations every year. And they've noticed that from 2018 till now, over the past 4 years or so, that rather than having gone through just 4 to 8 mutations, they say that this strain, this variation of monkeypox, is actually about 50 times different. That there have been around 50 mutations. So it's mutated at a hyper rate, and yet during the past 4 years, from 2018, 19, 20, 21, we didn't hear anything about monkeypox. Now all of a sudden it's blowing up. They tell us we understand this virus. It's not deadly. It's not this. It's not that. It's not COVID. And yet there seems to be an awful lot that is not known about this virus. And if from the early days of the SARS-CoV-2 insanity, we were not allowed to suggest that even the possibility that SARS-CoV-2 came out of a lab. The only possible explanation, and it was offered up as the truth, was that SARS-CoV-2 jumped from bats to human beings in a wet market in Wuhan, China. What they call a wet market, and it's a live market with live animals. And they said this interaction between humans and stressed out, confined, caged bats led to this SARS-CoV-2 virus expressing itself in the bats, and then someone gets bit or scratched, and the virus jumped into humans. That was the only explanation allowed. It's only laterally that a gentleman like Dr. Luc Montagnier, the late Dr. Luc Montagnier, not perfect, nobody is. There's no scientist who's been around for any length of time who's gotten 100% everything correct, I would wager. We certainly know that's true with Anthony Fauci. We know it's true with Theresa Tam. At the beginning of the pandemic, Theresa Tam said, we don't need to isolate people. We don't need to restrict travel. We don't need to stigmatize people. The chances of human-to-human transmission are incredibly small. Well, she was wrong. So if Dr. Luc Montagnier has been wrong in his eminently successful Nobel Prize winning career, well, he's in good company. That's one of the annoying aspects to this, is someone like Dr. Luc Montagnier will come out, and he expressed the opinion based on his expert Nobel Prize winning opinion, was that this SARS-CoV-2 virus, that there was no way it occurred naturally, that it was bioengineered, that it was a man-made manipulated virus, that they'd taken a coronavirus and played around with it. And for that, he was censored, deplatformed, slandered. He's a quack. He got his Nobel Prize from a Cracker Jack box, I guess. And again, I'm not saying he's perfect. But later we found out on that particular score, on this opinion of his, that it came from a lab. Now that's a widely held opinion, and now you're allowed to express it. And there are other things that Dr. Luc Montagnier said that have since turned out what he predicted happened. We were told, watch CNBC, one of their broadcasters, one of their talking heads, said something to the effect of, when a person gets vaccinated, the virus stops. With each vaccinated person, the virus stops. It can't jump from that person to another person. This is our ticket out of this. And that was allowed to be shared. That was allowed to be disseminated widely. Dr. Luc Montagnier had a contrary opinion, and he was censored into platform. He said that we would see the emergence of variants that would defeat vaccine-generated antibodies, and that things would blow up. Who was right? The experts who said it would stop, or the experts who said we're going to see a variant that's going to blow it up even bigger? I think the numbers speak for themselves. And getting back to this kid at work, we talked about the fact that we have never, Canada, in the year 2020, we were expected to have somewhere close to 300,000 deaths in this country that year. That was anticipated before COVID came along. And just pulling out my calculator, and if I would hit the right button, there you go, calculator, 300,000 divided by 365, we're looking in the neighborhood of 821 deaths each and every day in Canada, with or without COVID. 800 plus deaths were expected each and every day. How many deaths occur each and every day in a long-term care facility? How many? We never counted them before. You never picked up the news and heard how many people had died in Ontario or Canada's long-term care settings. It's an incredibly sick, frail population, people who are at the end of their lives. This is why they're in long-term care. Their families can no longer look after them. Their care needs are so high. In my province of Ontario, every other possible option is exhausted before a patient is assigned and given a spot in a long-term care facility. And if you go to the Ontario Long-Term Care Association's own website and look up their statistics for a snapshot of their population, which was done for the year 2019, so again, before COVID, it said basically, I think it was 86% of their residents need extensive help with the activities of daily living, what they call the ADLs. And that's dressing, feeding, toileting, bathing. They need not just help, not assistance, extensive help. That's their words on their website, Ontario Long-Term Care Association. Roughly 3/4, I think it's 76 or 74, so I'm just going to say 3/4 of the population suffer from cardiovascular and circulatory diseases. I believe the number was something in the neighborhood of 60% were taking 10 or more prescription medications. How many people in a long-term care, nursing home, hospice type environment, how many people in Ontario die each and every day? We never counted it before. All of a sudden now, everyone in these facilities, all the residents, were being tested regularly for COVID. And then anyone who died later, who had a positive test, it went into the COVID box. Would they have died anyway? Someone who's 80 plus years of age with circulatory, cardiovascular disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, goodness knows what else, taking 10 or more prescription medications, that individual dies, we blame COVID? And I've brought it up before, and I'll end it with this. They were so anxious to add deaths into the COVID column that in the province of Alberta, and I invite you to look this up, Nathaniel Spitzer, I don't know how the name is pronounced, I've only ever seen it written, Spitzer. This child, 14 years of age, suffering from terminal stage 4 brain cancer in palliative care, end of life care. Palliative care is where let's just make the individual as comfortable as possible. We know the person is dying, they're at the end of their life, so we just want to make them comfortable. You're dealing with prescribed morphine and other, maybe even opiates. I don't know. I know morphine is prescribed and goodness knows what else, because it's all about just reducing the suffering, because these individuals are sadly suffering. And what did they do to this child who, again, stage 4 inoperable brain cancer, palliative care? Days before he died, they subjected this child to a COVID test. And when his fully expected passing actually did happen, Dina Hinshaw, who is the Chief Medical Health Officer for the province of Alberta, for Alberta Health Services, she went and did a press conference to announce that Alberta had just experienced its youngest ever, to that point, COVID death. And if it was not for this child's two sisters going public and saying, "Why are you calling our brother's death COVID?" It had nothing to do with COVID. He had stage 4 inoperable brain. He was he was getting palliative care, for goodness sakes. Why are you doing this? And only then did Alberta Health Services, did Dina Hinshaw then say, oh, she tried to pass it off. She tried to say, well, we made a mistake. It was an error in judgment. Bullshit. And these are the lies we have been hearing for 2+ years. And the masks, just getting back to the topic of this. Anthony Fauci, Theresa Tam, David Williams, medical health experts, Anthony Fauci, head of the NIH, Theresa Tam, Canada's Chief Medical Health Officer, David Williams, Ontario's former Chief Medical Health Officer, all publicly stated that improper wearing, improper handling of masks could make things worse. They never explained, they explained why. They said people don't wear masks properly and they touch the outside material and you touch other surfaces and then other people touch, cross-contamination. They weren't lying. They were telling the truth. And I know when I was talking to this kid at work and I explained this to him and I explained to him, you know, I understand how he got angry. He said, when I brought up monkeypox, he said, if everyone had just done what they were supposed to do from the beginning, this wouldn't have happened. He wasn't manic, but he was agitated. He's convinced that, you know, he did everything right. And if everyone had been like him, that his life wouldn't have been as, you know, impacted as it was, because everyone's been impacted. But he wants someone to blame. So he blames everyone who didn't, you know, pay attention and follow all the rules. Well, we've had infectious diseases, pathogens around since the dawn of time. We just never counted like this before. How many in 2018, 19? How many people were dying each and every day in long-term care facilities in Canada? How many? How does it compare? Without benchmarks, without context, data is meaningless. If you don't have anything to compare it to, is 300,000 deaths in a year horrendous? Well, what were we expecting it to be? Oh, We were expecting close to 300,000 deaths. That was anticipated. People die. We all have a terminal illness. It's called life. And the mortality rate is 100%. Nobody gets out of here alive. I think that's a quote of Jim Morrison. Nobody gets out of here alive. We turn the world upside down because monkeypox is coming. It's right now, it's the summer, 80, 90 degrees, 30, 40 degrees. I think they have 40 degrees forecast for Ontario in the coming days. That's in and around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to be boiling. And you'll recall SARS-CoV-2 at the beginning, they said, oh, well, in the summer, viruses do not fare well. They don't survive well in heat. Well, we're in August now. In Canada, we start to get cold in September, October. If you're up in northern Alberta, if you're up in, southern area, we're further south than Minnesota. We're further south than many parts of the United States. But other parts of Canada, Calgary, Edmonton, and monkeypox is out there. They keep saying, we found a case in Windsor, or we found a case in Waterloo. There's no such thing as one case. Yeah, that's what you found. It's like I likened it in a previous video to a mouse in your house. Oh, there's a mouse in my house. No, there isn't. There isn't a mouse. There are mice in your house. There's no such thing as a mouse. There's no such thing as a case. It's cases. I'm no expert. Call this a guess. But my guess is for every single identified case of monkeypox they're finding, there are at least 10 more that are unidentified. They say that the incubation period for monkeypox can be anywhere from 5 days to 21 days. 5 days to 3 weeks, meaning that someone can be going around, an infectious person could be going around for up to 3 weeks without even being aware of the fact that they have the bug. And recall that with SARS-CoV-2, something as simple as a church service was branded a super spreader. Well, we can't have people gathering in a church. It's a super spreader, singing and sending out their droplets. Can't have it. And now we have monkeypox that is straining the healthcare system. But it's okay. We can't even cancel a pride event or a fetish festival or shut down a bathhouse, because that would be wrong. That would be homophobic. Well, you could shut down a person's business, have them furlough their employees, maybe give them some welfare, maybe if they qualify and can put enough checks in the boxes, maybe not. You could do that. That wasn't small business-ophobic. That wasn't church-ophobic. It was for public health. Well, if the same rules apply, if it really is, if you want to have some consistency, well, what is the main driver of transmission of monkeypox? What has been the main driver from the beginning of May 2022? What types of events, what type of businesses are super spreaders? And personally, I don't want to see anything shut down. Leave it all open. I thought we should have done that from the very beginning with COVID. I wanted to know how many people are dying before COVID came along. How many daily deaths would the province of Ontario expect in our long-term care facilities, broadly speaking? How many? 100 a day, 75 a day, 80 a day, 200 a day? How many? We have, there are 800 per day that happen in deaths overall, broadly speaking. About 800 deaths a day were anticipated in Canada. Ontario makes up, I think, close to 40% of Canada's 38 million population. So I think we're looking at 300 plus deaths per day just in the province of Ontario. Well, how many deaths a day happen in the province's long-term care, nursing home, hospices? And then how did the numbers compare? But they never told us the previous number, so we've got nothing to benchmark it against. Was it higher? Was it lower? Was it about the same? Won't tell us. And the data is available. They have it. That's what statisticians do for a living. That's why Government of Canada has its own statistics agency, Statistics Canada, and they can't tell us the numbers. If something scares us, we get to know about it. Oh, a 14-year-old child died who tested positive for COVID. Oh my gosh. They never told us he had terminal stage 4 brain cancer and that he was receiving end-of-life care. They never told us that. They just said he was Alberta's youngest COVID death, and it was a lie. And if it wasn't for his sisters going public. But the thing is, when they announced his death, it was with a megaphone. When they said, well, we made a mistake, it was an error in judgment, that was, comparatively speaking, a whisper. So, good night. God bless. Try and find some peace. And a good place to do that is start in the good book. And if you can, get to church today.